Bore da pawb a chroeso, good morning everyone and welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Environment, Regeneration and Street Scene Services Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Sean Percy, I'll be chairing the meeting today. Please ensure your phones are switched to silent during the meeting, and please keep your microphones on mute unless you're called to speak. And if you do wish to speak, please raise your hand on Teams or in the chamber and I will call you in. So just for the purposes of declarations, I just want to confirm we'll be scrutinising item 3A from the Cabinet Forward Work Programme, which is our only scrutiny item for today's meeting. So I'll now move on to declarations, which is agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members? Councillor John.
Yes, Chair, I have two declarations of interest. I work for Transport for Wales and I'm also a member of NPT Links. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. It's also worth me just pointing out Councillor John asked to attend today's meeting and is not a voting member of the Scrutiny Committee. I also have a declaration to make as a member of NPT Links also. Are there any other declarations? I can't see any. Okay, so we'll now move on to agenda item 3, which is to consider items from the Cabinet Forward Work Programme. Again, at this point, it's worth me mentioning we've had a request from a member of the public to attend and ask questions at today's meeting. However, that request did arrive very late last night and not within the normal timescales. I believe that member of the public is in the meeting virtually, but will not be asking the questions at today's meeting, and instead has been offered the opportunity to ask those questions at the Cabinet meeting when this is considered, which will allow them to ask the questions and a follow-up question during that meeting. So I do want to welcome James to the meeting, who's joined us online. So, members, the next item is the Active Travel Wales Act 2030 Neath Talbot Active Travel Delivery Plan 2024 to 2029, which is on pages 5 to 99 of our agenda pack. Before I go to questions from members, do Cabinet members or officers wish to add anything or introduce the report?
Not at this stage, Chair, other than to say we've initially reviewed the documents and had some follow-up meetings with the members, and we're happy to take any questions this morning.
Thank you for that, Dave. I think it probably is worth me just giving a bit of that brief background myself, actually, on this report, because it is one that was due to be presented to Cabinet and the Scrutiny Committee several months ago. I can't quite remember the original date, and there were some concerns raised during a chair's briefing around the report, and to officers' credit, actually, they took that on board and convened a meeting of Cabinet members, interested councillors, myself and others, to discuss this particular item. So it has had some input from members before it's come to scrutiny today, and I've got to say it is vastly improved on the original draft, and I'm certainly a lot happier with it than I was originally. But we do have a number of questions from members today. Obviously, some members haven't seen this report before, but it is just worth pointing out, just for context, that there has been a sort of process going on pre this scrutiny meeting on this particular item. So, in terms of questions from pre-briefing, my first indication was from Councillor Helen Kerry-Clark, who's got a few questions. Helen?
Thank you, Chair. Right, obviously I'm new to this committee, so this is really the first time I've read this document, and it's what struck me immediately was there's no time scales in there. It really, in order for us to measure the effectiveness of this strategy, is you need timescales so that we can see that we are on track to be achieving the things that we're wanting to achieve. I would also like to see, because it says something about you're going to continue to apply for active travel funding from the Welsh Government. I would like to see what we previously applied for, so that we can compare and contrast, so that we've got something to measure it against. There doesn't seem to be any measurable outcomes. It just seems to be a lot of, we aim to do this, we'll continue to do that. There are no specifics as far as I can see. So I'd like to see that they are included. Plus, the existing routes that we have, unless Highways works with Streetscene, they aren't always accessible. They need cutting back. They need maintaining. And although I get that, maintenance costs money, this is the Streetscene budget rather than the Highways budget. So I think that needs to be part of it as well. That it's a cross job, if you like. And also the other comment that I have to make is that it's a 2024 to 2029 plan. We're nearly at the end of 2024 now, so I really think it needs to be more accurate. And again, we're coming back down to timescales. Could I have your comments on why you haven't included timescales or anything measurable in there?
Thank you, Helen. I'm not sure who wants to respond to those comments. Wyndham?
Yeah, I'm quite willing to respond to Helen's comments, and thank you for inviting me this morning, Chair. And it's something that this is what Scrutiny is all about. And to get a concept of what Helen said, the report, it does cover 24-29, and she just said it is a bit late coming, but as you just alluded to, this was coming. It's been, we had another meeting with yourself and some interested councillors to expand what you wanted. So this is why it's coming back now. And the delivery improvements is subject to grant funding. And as you know, that NPT does not have an active travel budget. And without the certainty of funding, obviously they're uncomfortable setting exact timetables for delivery, but Helen asked for some monies that we applied for, and I can say that we've applied for £13,152,000 worth of grant aid, and we received £6,573,000. So what we've actually applied for, we've got roughly half. I think she said there is no specific budget for maintenance. Well, this is another thing with the grant funding. We get the capital costs, but any maintenance has got to come out of Streetscene and on council's budget. So what we need to do is try and educate the Transport for Wales and Welsh Government that, right, we can have the grants, but we need the improvement monies as well. Hope that answers the question.
Do officers have anything to add to that response before I go back to Councillor?
Yes, just to add to that point, obviously officers have been lobbying Welsh Government ministers about the issue of maintenance around active travel. It's been a bone of contention ever since the active travel guidance come into being. The WLGA and actually cabinet members from across Wales met with the Cabinet Secretary for Transport no longer than probably a fortnight to 3 weeks ago. And this was a very topical subject as part of that discussion. And Welsh Government have gone away to consider, if they can consider, some revenue contributions moving forward to contribute to their upkeep. However, no decision has been made as of yet, and obviously they're looking at their overall budget position within Welsh Government with the pending autumn statement. So we have raised it at the highest level, so we'll wait and see the outcome of that request.
Okay, thank you. Helen, did you want to come back on any of those responses?
Yeah, I understand that it's subject to grant funding and what have you, but as I was saying, that there doesn't seem to be any timescales, any measurable timescales within this document of I mean, okay, if we apply for it and it's turned down, fair enough, but there aren't any timescales of our ambition to apply for things. So I just wondered why you haven't included that.
Just to respond, Councillor Clark, obviously the bids are prioritised in discussion with Transport for Wales officers. Obviously, they guide us as to the priorities that they see would be best placed to receive grant. But even then, when we have put some submissions in, generally the overall pot for Wales, only about 50% of projects ever get funded. So in terms of planning, we can only deal with in-year schemes. And that's one of the challenges. We've also sort of lobbied for longer term grant awards over a 2 or 3 year period to give us certainty so that we can plan accordingly. So we are restrained or constrained by that approval process and grants being made on an annual basis.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to bring in Councillor Rob Wood. I know we had a few questions on a similar line to this. I don't know whether you want to add to any of those questions, Rob, before you. I think one of your questions was perhaps a bit different.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, a lot was covered by Dave's response. I am a little bit disappointed that officers in the introduction to the report seems quite downbeat. You know, we're looking to have this grant money. You know, we're not, when we're applying for grants, we don't want to sort of seem as if we're saying, putting obstacles in our own way. I mean, once these are built, yes, they'll go on to the maintenance budget somehow, but we've got to get them first. But my other question was, and I cycle around Sandfields quite a bit, and where the new paths are coming in, getting to where the cycle paths will be, some of the roads and pathways are awful. I just wanted to know if any work had been done to sort of marry up how the actual pathways are going to be linked into from residents. Because I cycle down some of the roads and the surfaces are really bad. And I just want to know if any work has been done, because otherwise we sort of having one lovely straighter path, but you're going to be coming off that path to perhaps go to shops or to go to residential properties or cafes or whatever. And those paths are pretty bad. I just wondered if any overview had been done of that. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Rob. I don't know who wants to pick this up. You have got your mic on, Wyndham, so
Pardon?
You've got your mic on. That's
No, I think I'll pass this one over to the officers as it's an ingoing thing. Thanks.
That's fine.
Sorry. In response to the Sandfields, we are looking at a Sandfields master plan. It's not going to be delivered overnight. We've done a feasibility report looking at all the routes that have been identified on the active travel network map to come up with solutions for improving those. This financial year now we're taking forward the design of 3 routes. So it's Scarlet Avenue, Princess Margaret Way and Victoria Road route. The others then will follow in subsequent years and we'll be bidding for funding then for construction for those.
Dave, can I come in, Chair? In terms of the wider question about maintenance of routes to those active travel routes, obviously this is something that we need to consider as part of the wider highway asset management plan. All of the routes and pavements are obviously inspected by our colleagues in network management. That's quite a robust and rigorous survey regime. That will determine the standard and condition of those highways in terms of road users. What we do have to complete, and it links back into the maintenance issues that members raised earlier, we do have to revise the highway asset management plan now to, and that review work is ongoing with a report to come back at some point in the future, whereby we've got to set the new inspection regime for the cycleways themselves as well. So I accept the comment about condition, but we've got some real severe challenges in terms of our maintenance budgets. Mike Roberts, my colleague, will have raised concerns around the maintenance budget for several years, and unfortunately, it's a real challenge for us. But we try our best to try and maintain the safe routes as well within our community. So it's not just the cycling routes. We've got the safe routes and walking routes to school as well, that we have to make sure that we maintain to an adequate standard. And again, this whole pressure around ongoing revenue maintenance is a real concern.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to come in there briefly, only before I bring Rob back in, because in terms of the Highways Asset Management Plan, it was something we did scrutinise it, in the Scrutiny Committee, and one of the points raised then was around how we're prioritising walking and cycling within that sort of maintenance envelope, and I think that's part of this broader discussion today, isn't it? It's one thing to lobby Welsh Government for additional funding, but actually we've got funding that we are using at the moment to maintain highway infrastructure. How are we prioritising that in accordance with national policy and priorities? And I think that's the kind of nub of what we're getting at here, isn't it? Particularly when we'll have active travel routes on roads. So some of it won't be necessarily a cycle path. It will be a quiet street or road designated for cycling. The asset management plans need to capture that and sort of at least acknowledge that there needs to be a higher standard for a cyclist than there does a car driver down some of those roads, just from a safety point of view. I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that we have discussed that as a scrutiny committee, and certainly, await the feedback and responses as those plans kind of develop, because I know some of those things couldn't be taken on board at the time. I think there were deadlines to maybe approve the plan within a certain timescale, and some of those comments were taken back. I'll just call in Councillor Rob Wood just to give his response to those answers.
Yeah, thanks
Rob?
for the response on it. Just a brief suggestion, really. I think the best way to see what the conditions of the roads are that link in is to cycle them on a bike without suspension, like I do sometimes, and you'll soon realise if they're in any good enough condition to link into the path. Thanks, Chair, anyway.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, my next indication is from Councillor Cathy James.
Thanks, Chair. Right, the first question has partly been answered. It was around the Highways Asset Management Plan. I was just wondering, you've said the report is due at some point in the future. I wondered if there was any approximate date or sort of ballpark figure, if we're looking weeks, months or years for that. Related issue, the gritting policy, is that being reviewed? Because I know at the moment low priority is given to footpaths and cycle paths, and that is also something which I think should be looked at in the light of the other policy changes. My other questions are around engagement and publicising these new routes. So it's assuming we get the funding and we've got new cycle paths, footpaths and so on. I understand that obviously they'll be publicised on the council website. There's ongoing engagement work with schools, but I was wondering about engagement with local employers as well, both from the point of view of people getting to their businesses as consumers, but as well employees. So for example, if we've got a new cycle path which passes Tesco's, are we going to be engaging with Tesco's to get them to both publicise the fact that their customers can arrive by bike or by walking more easily, but as well for their employees, and making it as easy as possible for their employees to use active travel to get to work? I think there's a broader point as well around policy and joining up different policies, because as a council we're an employer as well, and I think anything that we can do to make it easier for our employees to get to work without driving is something that that should be pursued. I mentioned it in pre-brief. my son was looking for work. He doesn't drive. We live in the middle of nowhere. There are buses, but few far between. And there were a couple of apprenticeships advertised with Neath Talbot Council at Neath Civic, all stipulating you have to be able to get to Neath Civic by 8:30 in the morning. You can't do that from here unless you drive. And I think that sort of flexibility is something which we could work on as well to make it easier for people to make good choices about travelling. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. Who wants to pick up the response on this? Do you want to?
Yeah, I'll pick up a couple of points, and then Russell, I'm moving on to Dave then. With the first point, with the gritting, unfortunately, with the constraints in the budget at the moment, it's not possible to grit all the roads on footpaths on the highway. The length of carriageway that is gritted has been reduced in latter years because of the budget constraints. Presently, we in NPT grit less than 40% of the highway network. The routes are set out in the winter maintenance plan, and that has been approved by members. And this is a part of the gritting policy, and it is outside the active travel delivery plan. So that's the first part about the gritting. Unfortunately, we'd all like to get more gritters, more gritting out, but as it is, it's unaffordable. The issue of promoting and encouraging active travel has been raised by officers with TFW, and it is a pan-Wales issue and not solely an NPT issue. Active travel funding allows applications for funding for promotion of schemes, not to promote change or mode of transport. There is a piece of regional work going on as part of the Metro project on working with businesses to encourage and facilitate active travel. And NPT is working with the Health Board and universities and private businesses within Swansea Bay on the Health Travel Charter. Neath Talbot has recently been awarded Health Travel Charter status, and this has not been achieved with no dedication budget from NPT. So all the points I think that you are asking, Kathy, we are trying to cover, but as we are going forward, more and more things come to light, like you said about getting in touch with employers, and I'm sure that the team will endeavour to do that. Thank you.
Do you want to add anything, Dave?
Yeah, as Councillor Griffiths mentioned, the Swansea Bay Healthy Travel Charter was a significant piece of work that was led on our behalf by Joyce Smith and the road safety team, but it was very much a corporate approach to raising awareness about different travel modes and about active and healthy travel. As I say, we were really pleased a fortnight ago to have achieved that status. As I say, we're working closely with health, but also local businesses and the Swansea University, and that forum meet regularly with businesses in the area to promote the very things that Kathy mentioned. Turning to the issue around buses and the apprentices that you mentioned, I think it is a little bit disappointing that the council couldn't have been a little bit more flexible, because our HR policies do allow for flexible working where we can and possible, so that people can either start earlier in the morning or later so that they can have access to transport. So that's something we ought to raise as a wider corporate policy issue. And I know within my own division, we do try to accommodate, family-friendly access to work and travel and start and finish times. As long as we can deliver the core services, then we have some pretty good flexibility around those working arrangements. So unless it's a very stringent post that you have to be on a desk or doing something at a specific time, i.e. a school crossing patrol's got to be there when the school's open, wherever possible, the council would work to try and accommodate an individual's needs. So I will take that back to my HR colleagues Thanks.
Thank you. Kathy, did you wish to respond?
No, just to say thank you for the responses, and it's good to hear that there is some engagement work going on. And thank you for following up the point about the start times. It was, I think it was last summer. It wasn't a very recent vacancy, so it's possible things were being worked through the system. Okay, but it's reassuring to know that it is something that is being tackled. Thanks.
Thanks, Kathy. I'll just add two brief points myself on this one. And, you know, we did have a bit of a discussion in the Personnel Committee actually around HR policy and how that integrates with transport policy and active travel. And particularly, we had one discussion around the fact that we're offering incentives to employees to drive to work. We're offering them discounted car parking, but not discounted bus travel, for example. So we have got perhaps a few areas where we're making decisions that, you know, to try and attract employers in, which we do need. We do need to get staff and retain staff. But sometimes we've been losing sight of actually some of the wider policy context in that. And I'm raising that here actually, because when I raised it in Personnel Committee, I was sort of told, well, we can't take that into account here. And I thought, well, actually, we should be taking these things into account across the organisation and across the board. And that applies to Kathy's point around, you know, do those start times work for public transport, but it also applies to sort of transport policy generally. So I just thought I'd let you know, if you're going to have those conversations with HR, it might be worth just sort of generally talking around that issue of, you know, how compliant are we really being, how consistent are we being on that approach to transport policy across the organisation. And I thought that was a good point, a good time to raise that point. And I'll just pick up on the gritting comment as well, because I think this again cross-cuts the sort of maintenance discussion we've had. There's a limited budget, and I think we all accept that, don't we? That, you know, we can't maintain everything, and, you know, we can't maintain all the roads to the condition we want to. We can't grit everything, but it's about priorities, and it's about applying those priorities in the context of local and national policy. And I think, yes, there's a constraint on the gritting budget and the ability to grit, but are we confident that we're making those decisions in a way that prioritises people that walk and cycle? And I'm not convinced we're doing that at the moment. But obviously those choices are harder to make in the context of a small budget, and I accept that. But I think it's worth pressing the point about priorities and making sure that when we're making those decisions in small budgets, that it does comply with the wider policy context. So I've got a question from Councillor Tim Bowen, Vice Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just a quick question. You said we've had 6.5 million so far. How are we prioritising these cycle routes? Because I know we're going out to consultation on a few of them. So has this money been put aside for these particular ones?
Yeah, if I may. So the 6.5 million is for schemes that we've already looked at in the past. Going forward, Transport for Wales have developed a prioritisation tool which has looked at all the routes on our active travel network map. So that's what we'll be using to prioritise routes going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, my next indication is from Councillor Nathan Goldup-John. Nathan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for, pardon me, let me attend this meeting. Firstly, I'd just like to thank Amanda, Laura, Dave and the team for putting the time and effort into writing this document. It's my understanding, I think it's one of the first delivery plans in Wales that will be adopted, so just a big congratulations there for leading the way on that. I've got two questions for officers and then one for Wyndham, if I may. The two for the officers are, will this document be going out to public consultation? Are we seeking the public's views on this document at all? And on top of that, will the document be annually reviewed or monitored? So whilst I know in the document in section 8 it says about monitoring the paths, the cycleways, etc. themselves, it doesn't actually touch upon the fact, and I think it relates back to Helen's comment, how well we're dealing with actually delivering the schemes. So I think it would be beneficial, if it's not already in there, that we do annually review this document, or at least have a periodic review of how well we're doing it and being able to assess ourselves on that. So I'll come back, if it's all right, Chair, after the officers answered the questions on this task, Wyndham a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy with that
Thank you.
approach. Amanda?
Yeah, if I may. We've undertaken stakeholder engagement. We haven't undertaken public engagement, and we weren't intending on doing public engagement unless members felt that it was required. Yeah, sorry, predominantly because we've already undertaken public consultation on the active travel network map that's already in place. With regard to updating the report annually, it's a tremendous amount of work to update the report. So we were going to do it every 5 years. However, we do bring a report to Cabinet annually to provide an update on progress.
Thanks, Amanda. Do you want to come back on that, Nathan?
If I may, Chair, yeah, just a quick clarity point on that then, Amanda. So you will bring a report annually to Cabinet and it'll touch upon how well you're delivering against the delivery plan, just so I'm clear.
Yeah, we
Okay.
already do bring a report to Cabinet, and I believe the next one's due the 23rd of October. So yeah, we'll be bringing it every year.
Brilliant. Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks. I was going to pick up that point in the sense of, I suppose the format of that report would probably need to change to reflect what's been put into the delivery plan. And I think if that happens, then that would be a good way for us in Scrutiny to keep track of that progress against delivery. And I think that the sort of wider point of why I thought this delivery plan was important was just having that clarity for all of us about what is the direction of travel, what is the level of ambition, what are the priorities, to allow us to hold Cabinet members to account, and to allow at least there'd be it being much clearer to track that progress and the direction we go in. So I think I certainly welcome the document from that point of view, because we've had lots of discussions around active travel over a long period of time in this committee and the predecessor committees, and we've definitely lacked that clarity collectively over what we're trying to achieve. And I think this, as much as members have given some constructive feedback today, I think this does at least capture the scale of that ambition and some specific projects and directions of travel that we want to go in. And I think that is really important. So Nathan, do you want to come back with your last question?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. So my last question is for Wyndham. This document says the right things. On page 53, it outlines quite an ambitious programme of works ranging from Sandfield's master plan, Neath master plan, Talbot and Aberavon master plan, New Bridge Road, the levelling up scheme, and various other schemes within the county borough. However, I'm very aware that it'll take good political leadership to also push through these schemes and ensure that this is an actual delivery plan rather than a plan that sits on the shelf. So I'm just wondering what steps, Wyndham, you're going to take to ensure that we see an increased rollout of walking, wheeling and cycling infrastructure in Neath Talbot, so that people can get around our community freely without the need or expense of having to have a private car. Thank you.
Wyndham?
Wow. Thank you, Neath. As far as I'm concerned, as the Cabinet member for the active travel, I'm supportive of the aspirations of the Wales Transport Strategy and the Active Travel Act, and encourages to change the travel patterns to contribute to the decarbonisation of the area. I will support officers in the development and delivering of schemes in line with the Active Travel Delivery Plan and subject to securing grant funding. I will discuss funding applications with officers to ensure that they meet the aspirations of the Active Travel Delivery Plan. The transport grant funding appears to be under review, which in the future, which is likely to require the endorsement of the CJC required in the future to ensure that the projects align with the ambitions of the emerging regional transport plan at local level. Support is needed to improvement from all councillors and improvements affecting individual wards. It's not really my aspirations of what goes forward in this active travel plan. I think what it is, it's the aspirations of all of us. So it's down to me as a Cabinet member to make sure and liaise with the officers that we are we are following the active travel plan as is such, and improving on it when we can. I could see in the future, at the moment, the active travel plan grant is a standalone grant, but there are machinations in the ether, shall we say, that Welsh Government are looking to bring that in together with the safe routes and the transport plan. So instead of having one pot of money that the active travel plan can go for, active travel, it'll be within the context of a few things. So I can see it'll be harder to get grant funding that way. But I think it's down to all of us. You know, it's all right to sit in the chamber saying, well, we're going to do this, that, and the other. But I know you, Nathan, belong to the Neath Link group, and it's up to you as well as us here to get the message out there. So you've got to change the minds of people in which way they want to get about, whether they wheeling, cycling, walking, or public transport. And one of the biggest things I think we got to do is get the public transport network right first, and everything else will follow. And yeah, I will put my all my efforts into talking and helping the office as much as I can, and hopefully, as this is, I think, a very good scrutiny committee, and I was on this committee in a past life, and I think you know, we all ask the right questions, and long may it continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Wyndham. Nathan, do you wish to respond to that?
Yeah, if I can. It sounds like active travel is going to be having a bigger pot of money that we can bid for. So I look forward to you, Wyndham, pushing forward the active travel case. So thank you very much on that.
Thanks for that, Nathan. And just perhaps a couple of additional comments from me. I think it was interesting. It was an interesting question in terms of, you know, the political sort of will and drive around this, because I think we have got to acknowledge, you know, if you look at other counties who've delivered more schemes than we have, is that they can be contentious. They can sometimes be unpopular with certain parts of the community if we're reallocating road space or we're changing parking arrangements, for example. But actually the greatest change and benefit in terms of active travel delivery comes when you make and take those brave decisions to maybe upset a small group of people to provide a much wider benefit. And I think perhaps that's the context in which Nathan asked his question, which is kind of why I'm driving that point, is if we're really going to deliver against this plan and deliver well, we are going to have to take some decisions that might not necessarily be politically popular, but will be beneficial certainly in the short, medium and long term for our communities. And I think if you're willing to do that as a cabinet member, I think you'd have a lot of support and respect from us in the scrutiny committee who really believe in this walking, cycling, wheeling, healthy travelling agenda. Then you would definitely get our support. And I think that's what we're hoping to see is perhaps that drive to really get through those schemes that will make a really big difference. So you don't necessarily need to respond to that with them, because I think you kind of made your points already, but that's certainly where I'm coming from when I think about the political drive around these schemes.
Yeah, well, it's a good point you make, Chair. And if I could just bring one of the plans into the area now as we sit here. I mean, we've got the Aberafan master plan. Well, we'll drive that forward, but it needs you as local members to drive it forward with us. So we can't do it on our own. We've got to have the local members with us as we go along. I mean, we've got the active travel plan now up in the Kimler. There's a meeting in the near future in the Scout Hall. What we need is the local members to come with us when the officers are presenting it. So it's no good. The biggest thing that we got trying to drive it forward is the local members saying, "Whoa, hang on. We'll make the brave decisions, if you like, but equally the local members have got to come with us." Thank you.
And I think that is a really good point. And, you know, we've had a lot of discussion with Amanda perhaps around where's the decision making kind of lie around the development of some of these routes, because the team will engage with local members who may have some concerns, who may not necessarily all have as much of an understanding actually of the benefits of this, because it's something we've talked a lot of in the Scrutiny Committee, but is a bit of an abstract concept to a lot of members in this council and in the wider community. And I think that's where, as a cabinet member, showing that leadership and showing that enthusiasm and drive, you can bring the members along with you as well, because ultimately the decision comes from the cabinet. It's not a local member decision to implement these schemes, but obviously it's much, much better if they're on board, understand it, and can articulate the benefits to communities. And we often get drawn into talking about cycling as well in these meetings, and I always like to try and pull it back to walking, because fundamentally, that's the biggest benefit here is from walking. And we've all got footways in our communities that are inaccessible, that are too narrow, that are missing, that have no drop curbs. We've all got elderly people on mobility scooters, people in wheelchairs that can't get to the shops, the doctor's surgery, or visit their friends. This pot of funding is what fixes that. And if that means we widen a footpath and take away some car parking spaces, actually that benefit is significant. So I just wanted to bring it back to walking, just a part of that wider context, because that's where the majority of people will feel and see the biggest impact, because it's mums in pushchairs all the way through to people in their 80s and 90s wanting to maintain their independence. And this allows people to maintain independent lives and live independent lives if we secure this funding and deliver it across our communities. So I've got one question for officers, actually, just around, it's more, I suppose it's more of a technical point, but I'd appreciate your views on it as well. And it's the sort of continuous improvement and the feedback we get around walking and cycling infrastructure. And I raised this during the sort of the pre-discussions we had when we were looking at the delivery plan. And members will recall the commonplace engagement we did on the network map, where we invited feedback from the public and they could put a pin on the map and say, this works, this doesn't work, I like this is something an improvement I need. And it was fantastic. We had an enormous amount of feedback, which was brilliant. And some of that has led into the development of the routes, which is great. Some of it was sort of little nitpicky things. It was those, okay, this bush is overhanging, or this footpath is in poor condition. And I know some of those comments were passed on at the time. But one thing that I think is really important is that we do come up with a mechanism to continually get that feedback and make sure it gets to the right places, because these really little niggling problems can actually be critical to a whole route. If you've got to get from A to B, if that bush is overhanging or the stinging nettles aren't cut back, you can't get from your home to your workplace. And I know we have reporting mechanisms and contact forms and all these things at the moment with the council, but certain things kind of fall through the net and get lost and don't get picked up. And I'm just very conscious that as much as the delivery of the future route is really important, and that's the number of what we're discussing today, actually making sure that the existing routes not just maintained well, but also improved and developed. And we've got existing routes that pass the criteria, that they're acceptable. But a few of us in this room cycle, and I cycle along some of the routes that pass, and there's a few little things I think, if we soften that corner, or if we widen that drop curb a little bit, this would work much better. And I'm just very conscious that wrapping that up in this plan would be quite important. And the other point I wanted to make is, again, we've talked a lot about engaging with other parts of the council, and on a delivery point of view, delivery of highway infrastructure is sort of split at the moment in terms of street care deal with some of the works programme, and we've had instances where members have brought forward suggestions for the work programme that have been funded out of our capital allocation and not the active travel grants. And I would welcome perhaps some views from officers about how we're making sure that all parts of the council that are delivering highway improvements and infrastructure and work are aware of, understand, and are working in that same direction. Because when I've talked about accessibility pavements, for example, that's, are we compiling a list? Are we putting together a package of schemes? I think there needs to be an understanding of feeding those issues into the active travel team and into those grants to make sure that those things don't get lost whereas traditionally we'd have had a £20,000 pot for our own funding to deliver some of those accessibility improvements. We have access to grant funding now. Are we making sure that all parts of the council really understand it and feed that information in? Because I'm not entirely convinced we're there. I think we've made progress, but I'm still seeing in scrutiny meetings and meetings with officers perhaps a lack of understanding and perhaps things not being joined up as well as they should be. And I'd sort of welcome some comments from officers around how we're working towards improving that, because that's another key part of the delivery of this, in my view.
Me, Chair. We've got hundreds of future routes on our active travel network map, which we'd like to bring up to the standard that's set out in the Active Travel Act guidance. That said, we know there's faults on some of the existing routes, and we've got a lot of correspondence going back and forth with network management where they receive complaints, and where we can help, we do try to help. And for example, we've removed a lot of barriers on some of the existing routes over recent years. So we are working with network management, and where they get complaints, we do try to put them on our list. We've also put in lighting in Talbot this year as a result of some comments that were raised. With regard to the grant, we did have the Village Road scheme in Aberavon, which was supposed to be capital funded, and we managed to secure a grant for that. So where there is a possibility that we can get grant funding, instead of spending Neath Talbot's budget, we do try to do that. Working across departments is not perfect at the moment, but we are trying to get there. We're now a consultee as part of the planning applications. So if an application comes in for a larger development, not somebody's extension on their house or something, but for larger developments, they do consult us, and we provide feedback from an active travel perspective. And we also design with Active Travel Act guidance in mind on all our highway schemes. But yeah, there is a piece of work to be done on it, and it's not perfect at the moment.
Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, just going back to your point about how the public can maybe pinpoint issues for us. We'll have to take that away, I think, perhaps have a discussion with our the colleagues in digital services to see if we can't do something on the back of our website and the mapping data that we've currently got there. So if there's something that they want to flag a concern on, we'll to see how that can get an auto-generated message to us somehow. So we'll take that away and we'll give that some thought and see if we can't put something in place around that. Again, it's a cross-department action for us, really. And your points earlier about the issue around the personnel committee, it should be a one council approach to these large strategic plans. Active travel is a key part within the corporate plan, and it's important that everybody gets that understanding and commitment and enthusiasm to make it happen. I do fear for the budget in the future, and I know that Councillor Neath Golden-John mentioned that there should be a bigger pot. The messaging I'm getting out of Welsh Government at the moment is that there's going to be less money available for capital. But we do live in hope around that, and please be assured that as officers, the work that we've been doing over the last year or so, particularly around the Sandfields area and Kimler, I think we're making really good inroads there, and I'm hoping to see the capital come to deliver those projects. So although we may have had a little bit of a dip, I'm hoping that we're going to have an increased amount of grant approvals going forward. And I think they will make a difference to the communities as well in those local areas.
Okay, thank you. I can see an indication from Councillor Cathy James. Cathy?
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick one on the point made earlier about getting local members engaged and making sure that everybody knows about this. Have we got a seminar booked on the active travel plan? I know we have so many, I've lost count. And if there isn't one in the calendar, might it be useful to have one?
Thanks, Kathy. Yeah, I'll bring Dave in a sec, but I know this is something I did discuss with Democratic Services a little while ago, because there's a few options around this. Because obviously we've got our own officers working on this. There's also Transport for Wales who are involved in some of the delivery and grants, and you've got external organisations like Sustrans as well who can talk quite passionately about the benefits of walking and cycling. So it was something I was discussing last year with Democratic Services about how to facilitate a sort of general kind of education for members on this issue. But I'd welcome thoughts from officers on this one. But I think it would be very beneficial.
Yeah, we have no objection to bringing forward a full members seminar, and I think bringing in all stakeholders, as you say, Sustrans and colleagues in Transport for Wales, and even the groups that you participate on within the community as well. I think it's all about that collective awareness raising. So we're happy to go away and have a discussion with Democratic Services about how we could structure that and bring a presentation forward.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Are there any other questions or comments from members? Okay, I can't see any. So members, I'll take us to the recommendations which are listed on page 6 of the agenda pack. I'll just get that up on my own paperwork as well. Bear with me a second. So that is recommended that members support the recommendation outlined in the draft cabinet report, which is effectively to sort of endorse this document. And I'm sure that, you know, I certainly hope the cabinet members and officers will take on board some of the feedback from today before this document is presented to cabinet, because I do think there's a few bits of feedback that could perhaps be incorporated into the document, maybe some minor changes. Our members, can I have a proposal and a seconder for that recommendation on page 6?
That'd be a proposed, Chair.
Councillor Tim Bowen. Anyone happy to second?
Happy to second, Chair.
Councillor Bob Wolford, second. Okay. Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, I will take it that this recommendation is approved.
Chair, to confirm, I can see no indications to the contrary, so the recommendation is approved.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is items 4 to consider items from the Scrutiny Forward Work Programme. We have no items from the Scrutiny Forward Work Programme today. Members will be aware that some items have been moved around to future meetings. We've also got no items under item 5, which is performance monitoring. So the next item is item 6, selection of items for future scrutiny. So this is the Forward Work Programme. Again, we had a very thorough discussion on this in the pre-briefing, and members will be aware that there are a number of items that we're looking to programme in to the Forward Work Programme. Potentially as well, we're looking at a date for an extra meeting to consider the Viva Port Talbot item. So there's quite a few things going on in the background. But before I bring Alison in, does anyone have any questions or comments they want to raise on the Forward Work Programme now? I can't see any. Did you want to just run members through anything?
I haven't got anything further to add at this time, Chair. I know that Tom, who is the usual committee officer, went through it very thoroughly in the pre-briefing. So if members have any comments or anything they wish to add, then I'm happy to take those on board today, Chair, but I haven't got anything further to add.
Okay, thank you. You know, as usual, members, you know, you can contact myself or Tim or Tom at any time to discuss items to go on to the Forward Work Programme. And we'll hopefully have an update. Well, we will have an update certainly by the next Scrutiny Committee meeting, which will be the special meeting at some point next month. I don't think we've got an exact date for it yet, but we'll have an update on some of those items then, in terms of getting those programmed in, and hopefully there'll be no further changes to some of the reports that we've moved around, because it is getting a little bit tricky to keep on top of all the changes. So the next item is item 7, which is urgent items, and I have no urgent items today. So all that remains is me to thank everyone for their involvement, officers, cabinet members who've answered questions this morning, quite a lot of questions actually from members, and for members of the committee, guest members and a member of the public for joining us and asking their questions. I think we've had a very thorough discussion on this item, so I really appreciate that. So diolch yn fawr and hwyl fawr.
Thanks, everyone.